Hey, Roland Frasier, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing good, Kevin. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks a lot for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today on the Next Level Agents podcast.
My pleasure.
Well, hey, Roland, what I thought was I'd like to just kind of chat with you a little bit. I've been able to hear you speak over the years through Genius Network and some of the other things that you've done. Obviously, you've got a lot going on in both the real estate world and outside. And I
Mhm.
thought it'd be kind of cool just to learn about that journey and kind of your journey in business and how you got to where you're at today and some of the nuggets and things that you learned.
Sure, let's do it.
Awesome. So, I mean, tell me, how did you get your first start in business? I guess I would like to start there. I was reading some stuff around real estate development deals and how it seems like one thing just sort of leads to the next. But in your words, how'd you get started in the business world and just kind of will progress?
Yeah, I would say I had a really good intro into it from my father. My father was and still is a tax attorney, and so he's practiced for I don't know like 100 years now. But he's he had primarily entrepreneurial type clients, and so when I was a kid, I would meet a guy that was doing real estate development, and then I'd meet a guy that was doing um, horse racing for these little things called pacer horses that are like carriages that go behind horses, and all the different ways that the men and women that were his clients were making money, and they were all working for themselves and they were all entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of, and he was obviously as a tax attorney, he had his own firm, so that just kind of was in my head to start with. And then I was a bizarre child with bizarre interests. My mom was a psychology. She was a school teacher and then a psychology aficionado. And so all around the books, all around the house, where there were all these books by this guy named C.J. Jung, which turns out to be C.J. Young as you get older and realize how to pronounce the J, and all these other guys, but especially him. And so I was kind of interested in psychology, and my dad and my grandfather were really interested in language, so I was interested in language. So my sixth grade book report, I think the one that I remember in particular was on a transactional psychology analysis book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. And which is a very simple concept. It was like parent, adult, child, which one are you speaking from and which one are you speaking to? But I was just like, that's really cool. And so I started reading all those books, and I read business biographies, and I didn't read comic books, and all my fiction was limited to the fantasy the Tolkien and those kinds, J.R.R. Tolkien and those guys. But so I had just, I guess it was a contagious, contracted interest in business. But man, I just always liked it. And then in the back of my dad's car one day when I was a little bit older, he taught at one of the local colleges. And when I was 15 and 8 months, I think I got my learner's permit and I was able to drive, and I'd drive him to his class. And in the back of the car, there was this audio cassette from Nightingale Conant package called by a guy named Dennis Waitley, called The Psychology of Winning. And I listened to it, and it was like, you can set goals, and people that set goals are 75,000% more likely to get what they want. And I was like, that's cool. I'm going to set goals. So all of that just kind of got me into it. And then I guess when all that coalesced into a business kind of interest was in real estate, because Robert, not Ringer, why am I blanking on him? The Nothing Down Real Estate.
Carlton Sheets.
No, it's Robert. I don't know. I'm blanking on him right now. But anyway, he wrote a book called Nothing Down, and he wrote a book called Creating Wealth. And he ended up motivating me. I was reading these books, and of course, at the time, interest rates were like 10, 11, 12% and going up. And in the book, it was like talking about interest rates at 6 and 8%. I was like, that's never going to happen again. So it's funny to see them now where they are. But yeah, I was like, real estate, man, that's a cool place. You can make a lot of money. You can buy stuff with nothing down. That's amazing. That's so cool. So I was building spreadsheets and like, I'm going to do this real estate thing. And I got my real estate license when I was 18. As soon as I turned 18, I was like, I'm going to get my real estate license. So I did, and started selling real estate, and then looking for opportunities to leverage my efforts, I found that if I went to builders, I could get lots of listings instead of going to individuals. And then, so I started working with the builders, and then I found out they were raising money to do their developments by um, uh, doing these things called syndications. And I was like, what's a syndication? It was, well, it's basically just a limited partnership kind of thing. We run it and we get other people to put up money and we sell it in chunks of 25,000 or 100,000 or whatever. And I was like, that's cool. Can I sell those? And they're like, yeah, that'd be even better than you selling our real estate. And I was like, cool. So I'll sell those. So when I was 19, I got my insurance license to do key man insurance for them. When I was 20, I got my securities license. And at the time, you had to drive. I lived in Richmond, Virginia. You had to drive up to Washington, D.C. to take the Series 7 exam to be able to sell securities. And I remember like that was a big deal. And passing that, I wasn't sure how it went, because like the real estate exam I was like, oh, that was pretty easy. And then the securities exam, they gave you 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. It was 2 sessions to take it. And I walked out after about 2 hours feeling pretty good, but everybody was looking at me like, oh, yeah, he couldn't take it, And I was like, uh-oh. And then the second session was the same. And I'm in, Washington, which I, was kind of like a foreign place to me. And I ended up passing that and getting my license with a firm in New York. And so that just all kind of led to, this is really cool doing business. And so I took all the money that I had saved from working at Golden Skate World and a river rafting place, a water park thing, and put it into one of the deals with one of these real estate guys, and basically tripled my money in about, I think it was 9 months. And I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And so I was totally hooked. And my dad had financed real estate deals for years. So I kind of had the idea of how that worked. And that just kind of led to doing bigger and bigger developments. I think the biggest one we did may have ended up with like a little over 1,000 homes, 1,000 lots that we entitled, developed, and then built on. And I did that while I was going through the end of high school and then college and then law school. And in the process, through the securities thing, got connected with Prudential Securities in New York and found out that you could actually buy companies like you can buy real estate. And I was like, well, that's even cooler, because I like companies are more fun than real estate. Real estate's nice, but it's just a piece of land. It's not like an exciting thing to own to me. I like the money, but it's not like there's no puzzle to it. I really like puzzles. And then when I found out you could do it with companies, just started buying companies and selling them, and buying bigger companies and selling them. And this is really cool. So all that just kind of led. I did all that while I was going to undergrad, got a degree in accounting, and then went to law school and started practicing law. And that's just been kind of entrepreneurial, since the get-go.
Man, so you're one of those guys that's kind of just said, hey, I think I'll go learn about this and then do it. And then you went out and did, a ton of different things. Like, fascinating story. And I could probably go 10 different directions, but I love the fact that you saw the correlation of, I could just help buy and sell companies just like we can real estate. And so you just didn't think anything of it other than to go do that, find out what do I need to do, and then start doing deals, right?
Yeah, that's it.
What are some of the similarities? Having sold a little bit of real estate prior to that, and obviously then being a part of some of those deals, was there some of that real estate background and knowledge that helped you in that? Or was that more of like I could imagine like the psychology thing, understanding the way people behave had to be a massive asset for you when you got into that world. But what are some of those things that you think helped you to, number one, maybe get over the fear, if you had any, to do a bigger deal like that when it involves a company? And then number two, some of the skills that are required there that probably aren't required to, say, sell a house.
I think a lot of great questions there. I think that the first one I'll address is the fear thing. I'm kind of like, I have had fear, but I'm not smart enough to let the fear stop me. So it's like I'm missing the common sense gene of, hey, this could be scary and could result in total financial devastation. And then I'm like, so let's do it, Yeah. So I like the challenge. I like the challenge of puzzles, and I'm comfortable with risk, and I find it exciting. So I think fear and excitement are two sides of the same coin, and it's just an interpretation in your head how you're going to process them. So I choose I choose excitement and let's go do it over let's wait and get more information. So that's the fear thing. There's a tremendous amount of commonalities between real estate and buying companies. There's a buyer and there's a seller. They all have the same rational and irrational thoughts and fears themselves going into the transaction and motivations. When you buy a piece of real estate, if you're buying a piece of real estate to profit from it, it's very similar to buying a company, because you're either buying a going concern piece of real estate that's producing rental income and has a cap rate and all that kind of stuff, like in a company where a company has income and sales and profits. And then on rehab real estate is like a turnaround company. Like you get into the real estate and you're like, we got to get rid of the cat pee smell, take up the carpet, put in new paint and that kind of stuff. And you go into the company and you're like, well, we got to change the bad products and, take out the stupid stuff and put in the better stuff. It's just not that different. Yeah. And the marketing of them to resell is also similar. Where's the pool of potential buyers? How do we reach out? What are they interested in? How's our market messaging going to catch their eye and make them interested in checking out this deal? And then the most fun thing of all on both sides to me is the negotiation. So that's all very similar too. So, and as you do bigger and bigger real estate deals, I think that they become more and more like company deals, because they're more of a business that has real estate than they are just like a flip deal where you try to find a place that needs some fixing up. But man, I think they're very similar. And I believe that the profitability, the profit potential for me seems tremendously greater in companies than real estate. But I like the stability of real estate and the tangibility of real estate, whereas companies, you might own stock in this thing that sells this intellectual property and there's just nothing, which, banks won't lend on that typically either. Yeah. And whereas real estate, it's like, okay, no, we've got this hunk of land with a building on it. Yeah, we can put value on that.
That's interesting. You kind of lit up there when you talked about the negotiation piece. So is that, where does that come from? Is that just sort of who you are, like innately, or is that something you developed over time?
Yeah, no, I love competition. I've always been very competitive. My competitiveness is much more healthy now than it was when I was younger. And I feel like, even though I'd say I don't do as well in deals now, negotiation, as I did when I was younger, I do better, if that makes sense. I don't get as much of the pie, but I make more win-win relationships. I like, when I was younger, it was like, I'm going to get the best deal. I'm going to negotiate this and this, and this guy was willing to do this and she was willing to come down to that. Whereas now I'm like, well, if I did this thing called the fairness zone. So to me, every deal has a zone of fairness. And if you go over one side, it's too much in your favor, and people will make unfair deals. But what I've found is that the people that make unfair deals tend to feel bad about them after the fact. They find ways to sabotage them. They'll get into litigation. They'll do, or they'll just go tell 20 people that you're a shark and you took advantage of them or whatever. And all that ultimately damages your ability to do things in the future. So I think now, if I see someone, I still sometimes play the game, because I can't help myself, of negotiating a really aggressive deal. But then somebody will say that they'll do it, and I'll be like, you know what? I actually don't think that's fair for you. Let's do this, and I'll put money back on the table, which seems to actually do better than if you just let them do the deal and didn't go that extra mile, if that makes any sense. Because
totally,
I know the last deal I was a guy that asked me to be an advisor for his company. And he's like, and we'll pay you this, and you send me people, and I'll, give you this and that and the other, and, get these deals for us. And I said, that's cool. But if I'm an advisor and I'm getting equity in the company, I think it's fair for me to, that's why I'm an advisor. So I don't think I should get that extra compensation. He was like, okay, if you don't want it, and I'm like, but it's not. So yeah. I think that it's important to be really fair in your dealings and not take advantage of people, even though they will let you take advantage of them.
Yeah, that seems, and that happens a lot I think in the real estate world. You made me think of a few of my friends that do a lot of wholesaling, and I know you've got some friends that do that as well. And a lot of them, like, they absolutely want to make sure that their list of buyers are making money. And
Yep.
so while they could make an extra 5 or 10 grand on a deal, they're always making sure that they're leaving enough meat on the bone for their investors to be able to make a profit after they do their thing on their flip or whatever it is that they're going to do with that property later. So that way they'll come back and buy another, right?
Yeah, that's the long game versus short game. Short game is let me
Absolutely.
get as much as I can. Long game is let's have a deal that has everybody feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And actually, if somebody says they don't feel good about the deal, I've really surprised people. Even down to one of my stories I tell is on eBay. I was trying to buy a camera lens for my son, and there was a buy it now price of like $2,000 or something like that. And I'm a aggressive negotiator. I was like, I'll give you $500 for it. And a guy was like, oh man, I don't know. It's like, I was hoping I could get more for it. And I emailed him, and then I emailed him back and I said, well, look, wait till the thing's over, see what you got. And if you don't, then, if I hadn't found one, then I'll buy it from you. And he was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'll sell it. But I'm just not happy about it. And I was like, I'm not going to buy it if you're not happy about it, because I want you to feel like this solved a problem for you or got you what you needed. If you feel that way, I'll buy it. If you don't, I won't. And he was like, no, I don't feel that way, but I'll sell it to you. And I was like, no, okay, I'm not going to buy it. Go through the thing. And it's this weird conversation over text back and forth on the eBay platform. But that's how I feel, man, is if that there's bad juju, bad karma, bad something. If you let people do things that they aren't happy about, they'll find ways to screw you or blow the deal or feel bad or just generally put bad energy out in the world. It ain't worth it. Long game, long game, long game.
Absolutely. You nailed it. So let me ask you, so what does Roland Frasier's business world look like today when you like your portfolio of companies that you're either actively working in or passively? I'm probably more interested in the active side, but I would love to hear about maybe some of the other things that you've got going on. Because my hope here is that our listeners who are making money in real estate now can then take their future earnings and what they're learning as well and go apply that and do something similar, right? And so that way their future gets set up as well. So tell me about some of what you've got going on, both in the real estate industry and out.
Sure. So I actually just did the count at the first of the year. I have 30 companies that are in my portfolio right now of investment companies, and several of them do lots of different things, but primarily they are in the real estate space. In the real estate space, I own part of one of the fastest growing real estate brokerages in the country right now, Big Block Realty. I own a real estate investor training company called Real Estate Worldwide that offers a SaaS, a software as a service, to real estate investors, where we aggregate the data of all the sales in the United States and then sell that data we have 3 primary offerings. One is cash buyers, because they're most likely to be the people that you sell your deals to. Vacant houses, because they're one of the best places to buy, to flip from other owners, and then another hard money lender kind of thing. And so we sell those. We also have real estate investor coaching programs. We have a title company, a mortgage company, an escrow company, and we have a real estate fund called Cap West, is a Regulation A fund. We registered with the SEC, and that we've raised about $17 million to do transactional funding for deals. So people who are real estate investors who in some states that don't allow simultaneous closings require you to close on the deal before you can sell to your buyer. They won't let you do it without actually putting the money up. So people need that money, but they only need it for 24 to 48 hours. And typically there's 2 to 4 or 5 points that get paid on that. So we fund that gap, and then we get our money back out of closing. And is that all the real estate companies we have?
Is that all? Just a couple?
We do a training through a real estate academy that we're in the process of getting registered with colleges and things like ACE accredited to be that. And then occasionally I do some, lending. Just we'll buy a place, and we have a literally a house down the road that we're fixing up right now, and going to flip. So it's fun. But that's my real estate stuff. Then outside of real estate, lots of different things in the marketing world. We have about we have about 61 really active, profitable websites. We own sewing.com, makeuptutorials.com, survivallife.com, do-it-yourself DIYprojects.com, all these different things where we build audiences and then find products to sell to those audiences. The big thing for us is we put content out, we generate interest in a thing, we build an audience, and then once the audience hits critical mass, we'll go and identify or create products and sell to them. We have several events. I love the event space. We own a thing. We actually just sold one of our biggest events called Traffic and Conversion Summit to a firm out of the UK that's helping us take it international. So one of our big things going forward is in all of the businesses, I feel like I've wanted to go international, and we have international buyers for our domestic offerings, but to actually put boots on the ground in Australia and China and Europe, that's all happening beginning in 2020. So I'm very, very excited about that. And our events are like our landing party that comes in and we do the event, and then that funds the ability of our other companies to come in and get a toehold and actually have a physical presence in those places.
That's fascinating. You said something when you were talking about the website space, about creating an audience, content, create the audience, then create the offerings for them. I mean, I heard a real estate, if I'm a real estate agent, which the vast majority of the listeners here are, I heard a lesson in there for them and for them to go out and generate their business in a similar way. So let me ask you that. Did I make an incorrect correlation, or is that accurate?
Not at all.
So you're around a bunch of realtors as well, involved in. Let me ask you this. If you were, let's say you got your license today and you're not the Roland Frasier that we know today, and you're going out, but you have the knowledge that you have today, what do you start doing as a realtor to make it in 2019 and beyond?
Yeah, my whole world is, well, the first thing, we have a real estate mastermind too called Closing Table, so I joined that. But the first thing that I like to do is in any deal is I want to find the leverage. So where are the leverage points? So going all the way back to when I got my license and I was like, well, I can go get onesie twosie listings, or I can find people that have literally hundreds of listings. And even though I might cut a deal that I won't make as much money per listing, I tapped into this honey hole of hundreds of them. So my effort is so much more concentrated and focused, it allows me to be way more productive. So if I was going into the space today, I would identify what are the centers of influence in the area that I am interested in, and I would go form those relationships. I think in this world of digital marketing, and I own a company called Digital Marketer, so I'm all in on digital marketing, but I'm also all in on face-to-face stuff, because I find that the biggest, best deals never happen digitally. You don't run an ad typically and find your best referral source. You meet that person belly to belly. So I would identify the people who are the influencers in the area that I was interested in farming. So let's say I live in an area called Rancho Santa Fe here in northern San Diego County. So if I was going to sell real estate here, I would say, who are my buyers? And I'd say, okay, well, number one, I'd say, what market do I want to be in? I want to be in this market because the effort that it takes me to sell a $3 million average house versus the effort it takes me to sell a $30,000 or $300,000 house is the same roughly. And the benefit of the $3 million, since we're typically on a percentage compensation deal, is so much better. I'm going to focus my efforts where I'm going to get the biggest bang for my effort. Then I'm going to say, okay, having identified that, who buys these houses? And I'm going to say, okay, people who buy these houses are typically wealthy entrepreneurs, affluent, upper-level C-suite corporate people, and people that have inherited a lot of money. Great. Now I've got my target market. I'm going to say, okay, what do those people do other than buy houses? Because they typically probably don't buy houses once a week. What do they do on a regular basis? Well, a lot of them are interested in, the men are usually interested in cigars, sports cars, and wine. So I would create or join, but I'd probably try to create, I'd join and then create a meetup or some sort of social thing around cigars, wine, and sports cars that gave me the ability to be the center of influence at that interest point where the walls are down because you're not in a business environment and you can network and form relationships with people. I joined the country clubs that are around here. There's like 3 major ones around here. I'd play golf with those people. I would, and if I was for both men and women, I would join the local charitable groups that got the most bang in the society papers. So every neighborhood like this has their own couple of papers that the local people read. So I'd plug into those and do some charitable efforts around that and just get to know all the people. And it's so funny because that's the first stuff I do. Then I would create content. I'd take my iPhone with me and I'd record everything and I would let people be stars. So the people that I was meeting, I'd say, you know, hey, Kevin, it's awesome that you're the head of the Rancho Santa Fe Garden Society. Man, I'd love to walk through your garden with you and talk about what you do to make this and what makes this good. And then I'd video you and make you a star, put you on a Facebook page that was the Rancho Santa Fe Garden Society or Rancho Santa Fe Garden or even San Diego or North County, and create a ton of content. And then I would retarget that content. You would obviously come and I'd plant pixels there, and then I'd retarget everybody that visited that occasionally with my newest real estate listings. That's probably what I'd do to start.
To start, you just gave a 5-year business plan that I know I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to that 3 or 4 times to take my notes, Roland. That was high level. And what I hope our listeners key in on here is this is from a very accomplished businessman who just really broke down not just the basics of real estate, but how to take the basics and take them big. And so, Roland, that was great. Thank you. Let me shift gears with you for a minute. I got a couple more, I will call it personal questions, if you will. Let me ask you this. So obviously you've been very successful in all that you've done, and your family has probably benefited greatly from that. But I want you to imagine that whenever you leave the earth, that you can't there's no passing of any money, there's no passing of any wealth or anything else like that onto your children or any other family members. But what you can leave them is values and core principles, things like that. What would those 3 or 4 things be? Or maybe it's more, maybe it's less. If you couldn't leave any wealth to anybody else, but you could leave, some pieces of advice.
Sure. Yeah. I try to do that every day. And my wife and I were talking last night. We had dinner with our 2 boys. We have a 21-year-old and a 27-year-old. The 21-year-old lives with us and the 27-year-old is off on his own. And, but we have dinner with them probably 3 or 4 nights a week. And to have that ability to be close and, sometimes they'll bring a girlfriend or whatever, but we are a very close family. And so I think that the importance of taking the time to spend with your family and nurture the relationships of your family, to share the interests, to show interest, that's something that I know we have already imprinted on them. To have a wonderful, open, communicative relationship with someone who actually supports you and you support back. Our son said the other day, we were talking about he had broken up with a girlfriend that he had dated for a while, or she had broken up with him, and he was really down about it. And we were talking to him about it, and he said, listen, I already know that I'm going to have a fantastic marriage when I get to that point, but just by being around you guys and seeing how you treat each other and how you talk to each other. And we were just like, that was good. You're supposed to hate us now. So this is really good. So that, and then the other thing is to be happy with your life, and what you're doing is way more important than any dollar thing. So one of the younger of our kids decided that he just couldn't get school. So he dropped out. He did not finish high school, but he was ranked in the top 100 people of this game called CSGO that has almost 5 million players, I think, that play every month. And so he was going to go, we identified the path and said, if you're miserable in school, the only thing to me that I think school is great for social and future relationships, and it's good to have the discipline to get through it. But if you don't require it to go do what you want to do that's going to make you happy, you can always go back, and we're not pushing you through it. And so we encouraged him to do the CSGO thing. So there's people that pay $5,000 a month for these kids to go live in houses and play these games because the teams are becoming more profitable, right? I think as of this last year, the only thing that was more profitable than video game spectator sports, where they put people in arenas to watch people play video games, was the NFL. So more than basketball, more than tennis, more than baseball, more than any of those other things. And this is a huge trend that's escaped most people that are over 30. But because I've got two kids that are in it, I remember buying tickets several years ago to at Staples Center for the League of Legends gaming tournament. And this is something for all that ties back to what your listeners might want to be thinking about if they want to attract younger people too, in terms of interest groups and things to sponsor and get involved with. But they wanted to go, and this was probably 5 years ago now. And this League of Legends concert was at Staples Center, and he's like, "Yeah, I'd like to go." I was like, "Okay, I'll get you 2 tickets to it." And it sold out the Staples Center in 7 minutes. The Staples Center to watch people play video games. And you watch the thing, they stream this stuff too. You're watching it, and it's all of these people in the Staples Center arena watching 5 guys, I think it is, play 5 other guys, and they're all plugged in with their headphones on. And on the background, there's this giant screen that shows the games, and there's fireworks and explosions and laser lights and everything. And the announcer's like, he's exploding up the middle, and he's taking him on the left, and it's like just like a real sports thing. So anyway, back to answering the question. So to me, it would be foolish for me to say, based on what I think is success in the business world, you can't go and be part of this thing because you end up owning one of those teams. You could be, and all of the NFL team owners and basketball team owners are buying video game teams because that's the next big thing. So being able to be happy doing what you do, even if you don't make a ton of money, is, I think, a really important thing to leave them with. To communicate and be fair, that fairness zone thing, I've hammered into them a million times, and so they'll watch when I'm negotiating, and they're like, it's a fairness zone thing. Like, yep, that's right. Those are, I think, the most important things. And then to be an entrepreneur, I really, 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 my younger son is not yet interested in doing the work to be an entrepreneur, but I think he ultimately will. And we've tried to steer him towards a non-entrepreneurial path that can become entrepreneurial. And my other son followed me around. Both of them, I had them go work out at a normal job. And so like be a pizza delivery person or a busser or a coffee barista or whatever things they all did. And then after they did that for about a year or two, I said, I will pay you what you're making now to shadow me, meet all the people I meet, see what I do, watch the deals, and get plugged in, because you will learn from doing that. And so our oldest son did that for about 5 years, and then made a couple of relationships, made deals, and now he's doing a little bit different version of what I do, and doing great. And I love that. So
that's awesome.
Those gifts, I think you should create that legacy while you're alive, though, right? That's if it's not there when you die. If I was to die tomorrow, all that stuff would be in place, and I just want to continue to reinforce that and support them and love them and show them that even if they make decisions that I don't agree with, sometimes I'm going to support them, that's what a family is, and that's what a family does.
That's fantastic. Well, I got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I love that you've done recently, you haven't mentioned yet, was the Business Lunch podcast. So
oh yeah, thank you.
These nugget size. I heard you use the term you're doing a 10-minute talk at a Genius Network meeting, and you refer to it as like snackable content. Is your content snackable? And that, it seems to me like you've got some snackable content there in that podcast. So where did that come from? What made you finally decide to start up a podcast and get that going?
I wanted to do it for the longest time because I have lots of stuff that I want to share, and I read stuff and experience stuff and meet with cool people all the time. And I'm like, I really want to share this with people. So I have wanted to do it ever since Steve Jobs announced podcasting, and then being too busy and thinking that I had to do a regular thing. I hate regular things. I don't like to be committed to, I have to do this thing every Tuesday or something like that. And so for some reason, I saw it like a radio show for years where I had to get on it from 9 to 10 a.m. every Tuesday and do this thing. And that and the thought of like creating all this content myself or having to schedule a bunch of interviews with people all just tended to make me think, I just am never going to do this. So for 3 different times, I bought all the podcast stuff and set it up in a corner, and then ended up giving it away to my kids. And I finally, a year ago, August, so year and several months ago now, almost a year and a half ago, I guess, I was at a meeting having breakfast, and I was with a business partner of mine and two of our clients, and we were talking about all this cool stuff. And I don't know what made it click with me, but I said, hey guys, we talked about some really cool stuff. And I had actually taken some notes. I'm big on taking notes. And I said, would you mind if we made a couple of quick videos about this? And they were like, no, not at all. I was like, okay, cool. So I took out my iPhone and I said, okay, you were talking about this really cool thing with avatars and who's your customer. Let's talk about that. And he did it. And each of these videos, I think I shot maybe 4 or 5 of them, and each of them took like between a minute and 4 minutes to do. And I didn't have to edit them because it wasn't like we had already talked about it. So it was just a recap kind of thing. And I posted it on Facebook on my personal page, and I got a fair number of likes, more likes than I normally would get on stuff. And then I was like, well, gosh, I wonder what would happen if I was to pay a little bit of money to, have more people see them. And I was like, okay, well, I can't do that on my personal page. So I have to go over to my business page, which I've never done anything with. I had got my 100 fans a long time ago, begging relatives so I could name it. And other than that, I'd done nothing. And I posted those videos, and then I identified audiences that I was interested in. So I went into I did the stupid way. I did Boost as opposed to the thing you can do on your phone versus the Power Editor. And I was like, what if I just put $10 a day for 5 days against these audiences? And I picked people that I thought would be, like I picked Brendan Burchard and Dean Graciosi and Frank Kern and Jeff Walker and other people who were in that particular market that I was interested in appealing to as my, whose followers would see this. And then I picked some job titles like CEO and entrepreneur and things like that. And I boosted them $10 a day for 5 days. And I got like 1,000 likes on this post. And then I got maybe a couple hundred likes on that page. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's way more than I've ever gotten on my personal page, because you just the organic reach of your personal page isn't that great. And so I said, this is a really cool way to create content. I meet people all the time. You and your customers, your listeners or watchers of this podcast meet people all the time who are interesting. You have conversations all the time that are interesting that slip away into the vapor of time because they don't get recorded. And so I think that just taking the time to record the takeaways from those meetings takes a couple of seconds. And I never did it with any editing. I just would give my iPhone, I don't have it handy, but I would just give my iPhone to somebody and say, hey, point this at me. Hey, this is Roland Frasier. I'm here with Kevin. We're talking about a really cool thing. Kevin, we talked about this. And I'll grab the thing out of your hand, turn it around on you. So it's like as janky as you possibly can get, but people loved it. And then when I travel, I'd record, I'm pretty good at getting hotel upgrades. So I'd record the rooms that I would get and say, hey, I got this. And I'd post how I did it and stuff like that. And after about 2 months, I was getting maybe 12,000 likes a week on my videos. And I realized that there was this little button up at the top that said you can promote your page. So I was like, oh, I want people to like my page, so I should probably click that button. So I clicked that button, and I did $10 a day for that. So it's at $300 a month on that. So I was getting, and when I did that doubled my likes to about 25,000 a week. And after 8 months, I had 1 million likes on my page. And anybody can do this. So when you talk about creating content and interest and making people stars, like in our conversation about if I didn't have anything and I was starting over, that video content is so interesting to people, and your life that you might not think is interesting is so interesting to people. And you are smart, and you do have lots of cool things and do meet lots of cool people every day, even walking through houses and stuff like that and talking about, well, I'm not going to list this house because this, or if you look on here, this house normally should list for this much, but it won't in this case because of this thing that I found. And if you're taking people through that draws people in, and then you tell stories and about yourself and your house and your people that you're meeting. You cannot help but get interest in those things. And so all of that got me to a big fan base. And one of my friends, John Reese, called me up and said, dude, you're an idiot. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm doing okay. And he's like, no, you're an idiot. He said, people see this for 2 seconds on Facebook and then it goes into the feed and disappears forever. You need to do a podcast. I'm like, well, podcast every week. I don't want to do that. And he's like, you're already doing it. He said, just put that stuff up. You don't have to be on a schedule. You don't have to make something that's 30 minutes or an hour long. Just if you do a 3-minute video, put that up. And I had been doing all this research in marketing, seeing that people want shorter and shorter content, which they call digitally snackable. They want to be waiting on the bus or at the subway or in line or whatever, and they'll watch something that's 2 minutes or 3 minutes long, but they won't watch the longer thing. But they do watch the longer things, but they also want both. So when I was like, you're right, I should do this, and I should create the podcast. And he said, yeah, because the podcast will stay there forever. And then people can binge the content. If they find you and they want to find out more about it, then that's way better than social for sustainability of content. So I was like, okay, I decided I was going to do it. And I asked my wife, I said, what should I call it? And she said, well, most of your stuff comes from having lunches while you're at business. So while you're playing business, she says, so why don't you call it Business Lunch? And I looked up the domain and it was available for, I think, $2,500. So I bought it and I was like, okay, Business Lunch, that's it. And then I started recording longer interviews like the one we're doing now with people that I meet that I think have a really good story that I want to share. And I've got some really cool ones coming up. I have Richard Branson coming up. I've got Gary V coming up. And so it's been fun to create a long form thing, I think, on Wednesdays and a digitally snackable thing on Fridays. And then pretty soon I'm going to take my content, because I'm not releasing anything about how I think yet, on Mondays. And then I'll have kind of a 3 times a week. Ultimately, I'd like to move to every day, but I need somebody, full time to do that. And I haven't been ready to commit to that yet.
That's awesome. We started our podcast the same way, and it's once a week. It's a long form like this. And then it's a snackable content as well. Ironically, also because we were already doing videos with like a business tip each week for the real estate agent. And so very interesting to learn that. And I've been contemplating, hey, what maybe putting in another episode a week with like more of my thoughts, what's going on, what are we seeing.
Funny. So, I think it's cool though, because people don't get enough of you, and you're the linchpin between all of the content that's coming out. So I think for them to see what you're thinking is a really cool thing to share. I think people have asked me for it, and I'm sure they've asked you for it. That's great. I love hearing about this person and this person, but what do you think? Right?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So I appreciate that. I only have one more real question. But before I get to that, so you mentioned closing table. That's something that's like a mastermind that you do for real estate professionals.
Yeah, we have 3 primary masterminds. We've got one that's primarily focused on digital and marketing entrepreneurs, people that have software as a service and e-com and digital info products and things like that. That's called War Room. Then we've got one for real estate investors called Boardroom, which is all people who are doing $1 million or more in real estate. And then we've got one for top producing real estate agents, brokers, and solution providers. So we'll get software companies, we'll get people that have 500 or 1,000 agents that are under them. We'll get single people that are just really crazy, killing it, producers, and all of those we get together 3 or 4 times a year for a couple days and just share the things that are helping us to be most successful and work through our biggest challenges. And it's a really cool thing to do. And whether you do it formally or with us or on your own, anybody that's watching or listening, it's if you're not masterminding, to me, you're missing out on the thing that can take your business to the next level the fastest.
Couldn't agree more. And then Big Block Realty.
Realty.
So you started in San Diego, and from what I can tell, it looks like we got plans to go outside of San Diego real soon.
We're in Temecula and a couple of other places now, but we will be franchising very soon, and you'll see us all over the place. So that's exciting. Very exciting. Well, good for you guys. Have heard nothing but amazing things coming from my friends in the real estate world who have been around Big Block or have actually, I've got some friends that are actually agents there. So love seeing you guys push that thing really big. That's great. All right. So last question, and I totally stole this from somebody we both know, Dave Asprey, who has made a big impact on my life. One of the things I love is he finishes his podcast by asking,
what are the top 3 pieces of advice for just kicking more ass? And so that's my last question to you, Roland, is for anybody listening, it doesn't matter if this is a realtor, real estate related, business related, personal related, just what are your top 3 things for just kind of kicking more ass in life?
Yeah. So since you mentioned Dave, I think that one of the things that's most important is that you really focus on taking care of yourself. And his bulletproof stuff is a wonderful place to look at the research and the science and
As I
say,
sip
what,
mine right now.
there you go. And say, because if you're not getting the rest that you need and have the proper nutrition and, and health and staying at least somewhat in shape, your energy level is not going to support you kicking the ass that you could kick. And so I think that getting more energy, getting more rest, being recharged, being focused and ready is invaluable. So that's, to me, step one. The second thing is, I think, to push yourself more than you are comfortable and put yourself outside of your comfort zone. So I am continually looking for, not stupidly, but I'm continually looking for things that put me outside my comfort zone. So like, for example, I recently spoke in our industry, there's a thing called the Internet Marketing Party. And they had asked me to speak a couple of times throughout the years, and it takes place in a bar where everybody's drinking, and it starts in the middle of the night at like 9 o'clock. So I'm like, that's not my scene. I'm not into that kind of stuff at all. So I never wanted to do it because it's like standing up like in the middle of a bar and talking. That's terrifying and horrible and awful. And when he asked me recently last year to do it, I said yes, because I knew that it was something that would make me uncomfortable and it would take me out of that zone. It would get me through some thing that I don't even know exists that's causing me to not get to where I want to get. So I did it, and it was great. And I ended up like, how can I make a bunch of people that want to drink and not listen to me actually listen to me? So I did my presentation. I think I called it Business Growth in 5 Toasts. So at the end of each 5 things, I made it really short, like 25 minutes. And then at the end of each thing, I said, and so here's to blah, blah, blah. And everybody drank. And it was cool. Right. And that was good. And then, the other thing outside the normal stuff, like definitely read and listen to more books and podcasts and all that kind of stuff, because education is so important. I think intentionally, this is something that's been super helpful for me, is every day starting with 3 intentions, the intention to accomplish 3 different things during that day that will move the needle, and then making sure that I do. There's a little app called Commit to 3 that I use that you could do this just on a journal if you wanted, but for some reason I like the app because you can share it with your team also. And so you just put the 3 things that you want to accomplish during the day, and you tick them off as you accomplish them, and then your team can see it, or your group that you're sharing it with. And I think that accountability and that intentionality, especially starting in the morning before the day, the whirlwind of everything, as Covey says, comes in and just takes all your time, because it will, then you know that these are the 3 things that you're going to accomplish. And then an overriding thing, because I'm a bonus guy. So the bonus 4th thing is the most annoying thing in the world to me is that while I'm always trying to up level and always trying to get to the next thing and never satisfied with where I am, I think that's what took me from being a real estate agent at 18 to owning all the things that I own interests in now, is that I'm never comfortable that I'm thinking big enough. I know that I'm not thinking big enough. And there's so many people who have done so much more than me. It's so much younger, so much faster, so much better, that I'm not turned off by that, and I'm not depressed by that. I'm motivated by that because, what the hell? I can kick as much ass as anybody, so I can get off my ass and do that stuff. And so that's to me a big deal, is knowing that whatever you're doing now, and no matter how much you're patting yourself on the back and self-satisfied you are with the big deal that you just did or whatever, you can do better, and you should do better, and you owe it to yourself to do better. And if you're pushing yourself all the time to do that, then you will do better.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, you definitely, I could hear the theme of think bigger all throughout this conversation. So Roland, number one, I appreciate that bonus. So like way past the time I promised. So like the last 15 minutes have been bonus time. And I just thank you very much. I appreciate your time today. And if there's any other parting shots you'd like to leave us with, feel free. But I just want to sincerely say thank you. I appreciate your time and for all that you have shared with us today.
Yeah, and I'll ask you this off, but I think it's good for once we're done, but I think it's good for people to know. I end every conversation with, is there anything I can do for you? So we'll talk about what I might be able to do for you once we sign off. But I think if everybody were to sincerely ask that question and then take immediate action, like if they say, connect me to so-and-so, text them right then, say, hang on, okay, I'm going to do it right now. Whatever it is, if you're always looking to help other people and you don't expect anything in return, you can only do better. So that's my parting thought.